Man, a Seattle airport cargo handler was unloading pets from an airplane one day when he found one of the dogs dead inside. So in his panic, he and his fellow workers got together and they worked up with this plan and story that they would tell the owner. And sure enough, this is what they said to him. They said, your dog was misrouted to Phoenix. Come back tomorrow, we'll give you your dog. Well, this gave these guys enough time to go to the dog pound, find a dog that looked just exactly like this dog, and bring him back. Well, that's what they did. They found one of these dogs, looked just like this man's dog. They brought him back, and the man showed up. And when they gave the dog to the man, he looked at the dog and he says, that's not my dog. Well, the cargo handler says, well, yeah, it is. You know, maybe he just looks a little bit differently because maybe the jet lag. You know, he looks just tired. The man's like, I'm telling you, that is not my dog. That is not my dog. And this went back forth for a little while till the cargo handler finally asked the man, how do you know this isn't your dog? The man looked back at him and replied, well, I know it's not my dog because I know my dog is dead. I was bringing him home via airplane to have him buried. Wouldn't it be great if pets can come back to life? You know, I think about the dogs that I've had and the hamsters we've shared, right, Liv? You know, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if humans could come back to life? People, loved ones that we've lost over the years. We know that that's not possible. We know humans and animals and everything else just doesn't come back to life on their own by themselves. But a couple thousand years ago is what we celebrate today. Something happened that had never happened before. Something happened on a Sunday morning, probably just like today, beautiful outside. A few broken-hearted people went to the tomb of Jesus Christ. They went to this tomb of a man they loved, a man they had seen die on a cross, a man that they had watched the soldiers crucify, nail his hands and feet to the cross, and pierce in the side, a man they watched die. But when they got there, they found an empty tomb. What a great day. They found an empty tomb and an angel telling them at the top of your message notes this morning, Luke chapter 24, he is not here, he is risen. He is not here, he is risen. And all of a sudden, Jesus is with Mary. All of a sudden, Jesus is with Mary, communicating with her. You don't have to go through life being afraid anymore. Take those words to heart. All of a sudden, he's with Peter. Jesus is with Peter, reaffirming Peter and telling him, you don't have to go through life feeling guilty about your failures anymore. Take those words to heart. All of a sudden, Jesus is with Thomas. You remember Thomas? And he's telling Thomas, you don't have to go through life doubting anymore. Please take those words to heart. No more. You know, sometimes I wish I could have been there. Don't you? You know, to see Jesus' hands and feet, to see the piercing in his side, maybe even to touch them. Because I find myself like Thomas. I won't believe unless I actually see the nail prints in his hands and feet and put my hand in the side. I wish I could have been there to remove all doubt. Anybody with me on this? Man, I just wish. I just take away all of my doubt and know for sure Jesus just appeared to me and let me get it. Because the Apostle Paul writes this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 14. He says, and if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. That's kind of scary, isn't it? If Jesus didn't die on the cross and rise from the dead, then all of this is for nothing. We just packed 200 people in a hot, burning up church this morning and sang all these songs for what? To feel good about ourselves. I mean, we say we're here to worship Jesus Christ, right? If he died on the cross and stayed in the grave, this would be all for nothing. But Jesus rising from the dead is the most important event that has ever happened in the history of the world. You know how important it is? You know, they divide time into BC, what happened before Jesus, and AD, what happened after Jesus. That's how important this event is in the history of all of the world, that we would divide time around Jesus Christ. The apostles saw Jesus alive, and they got it. They knew what was going on. The women saw the empty tomb. Mary even got to talk with Jesus on her way back home. Got to talk with Jesus. And these women, they got it. They knew what was going on. Thomas finally got to feel the wounds. He got to see the nail prints in his hands and feet. And you know what? Thomas got it. Thomas got it. Hundreds of people saw Jesus walking around the streets of Jerusalem. After he had died and come back to life, they see Jesus walking around the streets of Jerusalem. And you know what? These hundreds of people, they got it. And a movement started that hell itself could not prevail against. They got it. You know who else got it? We talked about this last Sunday. You know who else got it? The very people that put Jesus in the tomb. They understood what was going to happen. The elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law. Remember, that's why they sent this guard out there to watch the tomb and to seal up. They understood. They understood better than the followers of Jesus understood. The apostles had no idea. But the people that put Jesus in the tomb knew that he said he's going to come back to life. Isn't that interesting? They understood and they got it. And so I want you to watch this clip from the movie Risen, because the Romans and the teachers of the law and all these religious leaders, they got it. Watch this clip from the movie Risen.
He's gone.
The Nazarene.
Of course, the Nazarene. His tomb is stone empty.
Who brought this news? The guards?
Your guards are missing. Some simpleton reported it. Who did you put on the detail? I want them found and lashed to death, preferably.
Let me investigate.
Well, that will be helpful before Caiaphas and his pack of raving Jews show up here.
Too late. Tribune. Shall we dispense with lies? The guards have told me.
They came to you.
Seeking sanctuary. They know the penalty for sleeping on duty.
What happened?
Exactly as I had predicted. The heretic's disciples came in the night and stole the body. Already they are proclaiming him risen from death.
Will the people believe it?
The weak will. Others want to, so we must announce the theft.
Will they believe you?
They'll believe the guards, if you don't kill them first.
Endless.
Proclaim it before this blossoms.
It's not enough. Without a corpse to prove him dead, we have a potential Messiah. I want no doubt. Tiberius cannot arrive to unrest. We must find a body.
The Guinness Book of World Records lists a man, very impressive man, that is defined as the most successive lawyer in all of history. Sir Lionel Luckhoo, defense attorney, won 245 successive murder acquittals. That's pretty impressive. In fact, he was knighted twice by Queen Elizabeth. She put him on her team, her defense and what's the word I'm looking for? Her counsel to conduct court work on her behalf. Isn't that cool? This guy is very intelligent, very successful attorney. One day, someone goes to Luckhoo and they say, I want you to investigate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. They challenge him to apply his legal skills to the evidence of the resurrection of Jesus. And for several years, that's what he did. He dedicated his work finding out if whether or not the resurrection of Jesus Christ could actually have happened. For several years, he studied the historical record. Here's his conclusion. I say unequivocally that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ is so powerful that it compels acceptance by proof, which leaves absolutely no room for doubt. So at 64 years of age, Sir Lionel Luckhoo became a Christian. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Well, I want to give you some evidence. The evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ leaves absolutely no room for doubt. What evidence? Well, I'm going to give you 4 pieces this morning. There's tons out there, but I want to give you 4 pieces I think are pretty important and just kind of blaringly obvious that Jesus actually did rise from the dead. So take notes, get your message notes out there in your bulletins and follow along with me. Write this first one down. There's the evidence of the empty tomb. Plain and simple. The tomb was empty. You know, over the years, many people have come and gone, and they've kind of given reasons why this could not have happened. They object to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some people just can't believe that a man would die and then 3 days later come to life again on his own. So they've come up with some reasons why that could not have happened and tried to explain it away. First one is this. Some say that somebody stole Jesus' body. Someone stole it. Now, if the Roman government or the Jewish authorities had stolen the body, here's the deal. They would have had to have produced a body in order to prove to the people that Jesus was in fact still dead. That never happened. That never happened. If you saw the movie Risen, that's what they spend the whole movie trying to do, is produce a body to prove to the Jews that Jesus was in fact still dead. They couldn't do it. And it never happened, even according to historical record. They never did that. So what did they do? We saw the movie clip. They blamed the disciples. The disciples came in the middle of the night and stole the body. Well, that's biblical. Matthew 28. Verses 12 and 13, we read this. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, you are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. So they devised this story, and you read in the book of Matthew that this story was widely circulated among the people of that day. But think about this. If the disciples had stolen Jesus' body and hidden it somewhere, why would they lie about his rising from the dead? And start this whole movement of Christians, of the church as we know it today, start this whole movement. And here's even a better question. Why would these guys die for a lie? You know, all but 2 of them really were martyred because they believed in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. How many of you would you go to your death because of a lie? I don't think I would. I'd be like, nope, it didn't happen. I was just kidding. It's a joke. Set me free. These people died because of their faith. And not just these guys, but a bunch of people died because of their faith in the fact that there was a resurrection of Jesus from the grave. Well, kind of blow that out of the water. Here's the second one. Some say that Jesus never really died. He didn't die. They call this the swoon theory. They say that the loss of blood and the torment that Jesus went through caused him to fall into this deep coma. He fell asleep. And when he was lying in the tomb and smelled the aroma of the burial spices, he felt the coolness of the tomb wrapped around him, he just woke up and walked out, pushed this huge stone aside, and overcame armed guards, swords, shields, spears, everything else, overcame armed guards. Then he walked 7 miles to 2 guys walking on the road of Emmaus and told them, I'm alive, surprise, and convinced them that he was alive. After severe beatings, loss of blood, crucifixion, a spear thrust into his side, 75 pounds of spices and wraps around his body in the tomb, no food or water for 3 days, and you want me to believe that he just fell asleep and just walked out? No way. Couldn't happen. All right, so we'll toss that one out. Others say that Jesus' followers had so much anticipation of Jesus coming back from the dead that they hallucinated his coming, his appearing. They hallucinated. They imagined that Jesus just appeared to them in the room. All together, at one time they imagined this happened. 100% of them said they saw Jesus, but it was just their imagination. All together at the same time. The New Testament says that the disciples weren't even expecting Jesus to come back from the dead. In fact, Jesus told them over and over again, I'm going to go into Jerusalem, I'm going to die, I'm going to be put to death, I'm going to come back from the dead. And it says that the disciples just didn't understand that. And then John says, until Jesus actually came back from the dead, they finally realized, oh, that's what he was talking about. They weren't expecting Jesus to come back to life. They didn't even understand what he was talking about. And do you know it wasn't even just Jesus' followers who saw Jesus alive? Believers and unbelievers alike saw Jesus walking around the streets of Jerusalem and spending time with his disciples. And then we get to Acts chapter 2. Remember Acts chapter 2? Peter's speaking to this crowd of over 3,000 people, 3,000 men plus women and children. I imagine a crowd, maybe 10,000 people there. And Peter's up there talking to these people, and you know what he tells them? Hey, you guys put Jesus to death. But that's okay. He came back to life. And do you know, not one person stood up and said, that's not right. Nobody shook their fists and got angry and said, that didn't happen. Do you know what happened on that day? Over 3,000 people put their faith in Jesus Christ and got baptized. Isn't that cool? No way they imagined it. No way they hallucinated it. All right, so we'll throw that one out. The last one I'll share with you is some people say that the disciples and the women, they all went to the wrong tomb. I love that when I hear a laugh. They went to the wrong tomb. Now, don't you think Joseph of Arimathea, you know, the guy that took Jesus' body down and put it in the grave, don't you think he would have been like, guys, it's over there. Dude, look. You know, and if it wasn't Joseph, if it weren't Joseph that would have told him, you know, it's over there, it would have been the Romans, because they had to prove that Jesus was still dead. The Romans would have said, if there were a right tomb, the Romans would have said, nope, he's over there. Go look, he's still dead. But that never happened. That never happened. Object all you want. The evidence points to number one, an empty tomb. The tomb was empty. Luke 24. It says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went into the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. They did not find his body. It was empty. Well, if that's not enough for you, let me give you the second piece of evidence, and that is fulfilled prophecies. Fulfilled prophecies. Do you know the Old Testament, the prophecies predicted a coming Messiah? There were over 300 prophecies about Jesus, about the coming Messiah. Do you know how many Jesus fulfilled? All of them. 300. Yeah, Jesus fulfilled every single prophecy. That's a 100% accuracy rating. I've given you the statistics on how probable that would have been, and it's just astounding that Jesus is the one who actually did fulfill all of these. But just regarding the Messiah's death, burial, and resurrection, look what happened. And I've given you the scriptures there on your outlines. But here's what the prophets foretold and what Jesus fulfilled. They foretold he would ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. He would enter the temple. He would be betrayed by a friend. He would be sold for 30 pieces of silver. The silver would be thrown into the temple. The silver would be used for a potter's field. He would be forsaken by his disciples. He would be accused by false witnesses. He would remain silent before his accusers. He would be wounded and bruised. He would be whipped and spat upon. He would be mocked. His hands and feet would be pierced. He would be crucified with thieves. People would shake their heads at him. His clothes would be divided and lots cast for them. He would be offered gall and vinegar to drink. The exact words of his death cry were predicted. Not one of his bones would be broken. His heart would literally burst. His side would be pierced. Darkness would fall. In broad daylight, he would be buried in a rich man's tomb, and he would be resurrected from the dead. All of that is in the Old Testament. Prophesied that the Messiah would fulfill every single one of them. And you know what? He did. He did it. And it's amazing. Here's the third piece of evidence. Eyewitness accounts. Eyewitness accounts. Man, you want to go to a trial and see what's going on there. You know, you always need good eyewitnesses to say what happened or what didn't happen. Well, we've got some eyewitness accounts. Acts 1:3. I love this verse. Speaks so powerfully to me. Acts 1:3. After Jesus' suffering, he showed himself to these men and gave many convincing proofs that he was alive. He appeared to them over a period of 40 days and spoke about the kingdom of God. He gave many convincing proofs that he was alive. Yet people still want to doubt. Over in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul says this, "For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. And get this, he appeared to Peter, then to the 12. After that, he appeared to, get this, more than how many? 500 of the brothers at the same time, most of whom, Paul says, are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me, to the apostle Paul, as to one abnormally born. The apostle Paul left no doubt that Jesus is alive and well. Plenty of people saw Jesus. They talked with Jesus. They watched him give convincing proofs that he was still alive. And if you didn't believe it, Paul's saying, all you got to do is talk to one of these guys that saw him. That's all you got to do. I guarantee you he's alive. Just look. Eyewitness accounts. Here's the last one. Changed lives. Changed lives. I think it's interesting. Jesus predicted it. Excuse me. Jesus told the apostles, when I'm arrested and betrayed into hands of sinners, you're all going to flee. Guess what they did? They were gone, except for John and Peter, and they kind of followed closely, you know. They were gone. They fled. At Jesus' death, all the disciples fled. Peter went outside, he cried, remember? Because he disowned him 3 times. Mary and the other women, on Sunday morning, they go to the tomb with burial spices. Thomas doubted. Even when these guys saw Jesus for the very first time after his coming back to life, they feared for their lives. They feared for their lives. But when the disciples realized that Jesus came back to life, they started a movement that not even hell itself could ever conquer, defeat, even damage. 1 minute, these guys, these disciples, they're defeated. And the next minute, they're dynamic. 1 minute, they're crushed. The next, they're confident. 1 minute, they're having a pity party for themselves. The next, they're taking on the world. 1 minute, they're paralyzed with fear. The next, they're filled with faith. John Stott writes this. He says, the transformation of the disciples is perhaps the greatest evidence of all for the resurrection. What these guys did because they saw the risen Jesus Christ, what these guys did changed the world. Changed the world. And for 2,000 years, people's lives have been changed because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If you need more, I got more. Simon Greenleaf, Jewish professor, greatest authority in the history of the United States on evidence. He made Harvard Law School what it is today. A student challenged him to investigate and apply his rules of evidence to the resurrection. You know what happened to him? He became a Christian. Edmund Bennett served as dean of the law school at Boston University. He investigated the resurrection. Guess what happened to him? He believed it. Frank Morrison, a journalist and a lawyer, set out to disprove the resurrection. He wasn't going to say that he went out and said, this didn't happen and I'm going to prove it. Guess what? He investigated it. You know what happened? He devoted his life to Christ. He became a Christian as a result. Josh McDowell. We know Josh McDowell. I remember Josh McDowell, youth groups and things like that. Josh McDowell was an agnostic, headed for law school. He investigated the resurrection, and guess what? He got converted. And Josh McDowell, since then, he's helped convert thousands of young agnostics to believe in Jesus Christ. That's amazing. Lee Strobel, you know The Case for Christ and all that other stuff. Lee Strobel wrote that. Lee Strobel, he was an award-winning legal editor of the Chicago Tribune, and guess what? An atheist. An atheist. He says there is no God. You know what happened to Lee Strobel? He investigated the resurrection and became one of today's greatest apologists. Unbelievable. 64 years of age, I just told you at the beginning of this, Sir Lionel Luckhoo, the most successful lawyer in the history of the world, became a Christian because of his investigating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You want more? I got more. There's thousands, millions of people more who gave their lives to Jesus Christ because they were convinced the evidence is blaringly obvious that Jesus Christ is alive and well. And you know what? I'm one of them. I don't need to see his hands and feet. I don't need to touch his side. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, he is alive and well. But you know, the only one who may not yet have written or declared his or her decision, you may be sitting in this room right now. You may be questioning right now, could this really have happened? Maybe you came to church this morning to appease your family, because it's Easter. Jesus is alive and well. Maybe some of you came here this morning because you're curious. What's church all about? What's it like? I want to go find out. Jesus is alive and well. Maybe you came to church because it's Sunday morning. It's what we always do. We go to church on Sunday morning. Guess what? Jesus is alive and well. And there is something great going to happen in your life when you believe that. When you believe that. Jesus is alive and well. And because Jesus is alive and well, many of us in this room, we have become fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. We have given our lives to this because we love Jesus and we want to follow him. We want to figure out how to do this better. So we've got 3 L's. We get together every chance we can. Every Sunday morning we are committed to this. Every Wednesday night we gather in small groups. We're committed to this. Why? 3 L's. Write this in your notes. We want to learn how to follow Jesus better. We want to live as followers of Jesus every day with the hope that we might lead other people to follow Jesus as well. That's why we do what we do. I know some people say, the church is full of hypocrites. You're right. You're right. That's why we're here. We're trying to figure out how to do it better. I admit, man, I go home, I mess up. It's not easy living life as a Christian. I drive on the roads. I mess up. It's hard to live as a Christian, but you know what? I'm trying to figure it out, how to do it better. And as a church, that's what we're trying to do, to live for him and to learn how to do that better and live for Jesus so that we might just lead one more person for Jesus Christ. That's why we do it. So in light of all the evidence that Jesus is alive and well, I want to ask this. Will you choose these 3 L's with us? Will you choose to learn how to follow him better, live as his follower every day, and hope that you might lead one more to follow Jesus as well? Will you do that? Men in this room, will you step up and put Jesus at the center of your lives and become the leaders of your family that God wants you to be? Will you do that, men? Will you stop living a status quo life? Will you take a risk and really, really allow Jesus to transform who you are and become the example that your family and that God needs you and wants you to be? Will you do that, men? Men in this room, will you do it? Man, I'm praying for you. Women, I'm not going to leave you out either. Women, will you be the nudging force? Notice I didn't say nagging force. Will you be the nudging force in your husband's life? And encourage him. Encourage him to take you to church, to pray with you, to talk about Jesus together as a family. Women, will you step out in faith and will you show your family what living for Jesus really looks like? Will you do that, women? I'm praying for you. One more group. Students. Kids, children sitting in this room. Man, I'm getting emotional. You know what happened this week? 3 kids riding in a car, joy riding. One gets thrown out, loses his life. 2 other end up in the hospital. I guess they're home now, doing better. Shouldn't happen. Students, children, kids, will you dare? Will you dare to take a stand? Will you allow Jesus to really infiltrate your lives? Students, kids, man, will you go against the flow and not fall prey to getting drunk, getting high, sleeping around, bullying other kids, stealing cars and going for joy rides, putting other people's lives? Will you not do that? Will you not fall prey to that? But will you fall prey to the power of Jesus in your life so that you can change this crazy world? Will you do that, students? Man, I'm praying for you.